Black people's locations sometimes are not beautiful architecture. They could be some storefront that was a church on Sunday, and then it was a breakfast program Monday through Friday, and then maybe some other group held a day camp there during the summer. Like, it could be anything at these storefronts. So they may not always be beautiful, but they may mean something to our history. And I think a lot of us should really look at our communities, what's important, because that gives our young people a sense of identity when they're coming and going, walking to school. Like, imagine what our mentality would be if you walked by the Black Panther Party headquarters every day and you knew that, even though they weren't in operation anymore. You'd be like, oh, that was I know the Black Panther, their headquarters right down, you have a sense of identity.
From Harold Washington to Harold's Chicken and everything in between and beyond, SoCHiology is the exploration of Chicago culture, history, legends, stories, and fiction through a myriad of discussions with Chicagoans themselves.
Lou Palmer was a Black American journalist that came to the city of Chicago in the 1950s, and he did a lot of work for the Chicago Defender as well as other Chicago publications. After the assassinations of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark on December 4th, 1969, he wrote that it was enough to make a Negro turn Black. Now, the building where Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were murdered at no longer exists, but there is another property that sits there in its place. But how many Chicagoans know about the history that occurred at that location? Not many. This is why the Historical Preservation Society of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party was created. Leila Wills is the co-founder and executive director of this organization, and their sole mission is to fight for landmark status for locations like that, as well as other places where the Black Panther Party here in Chicago met, dwelled, and organized. They are fighting to get that landmark status preserved in stone. So in this episode of SoCHiology, Leila is going to go into more details about this mission, about how the organization came about, and the journey along the way as they accumulate more and more locations about the Black Panther Party here in Chicago and in Illinois, about the history that we do not know, but we need to know. Let's get right into it.
Like, you are the offspring of two Panthers from Chicago. So, you grew up in Algale Gardens, South Side, 130th. I'm very familiar with the area. I'm from Riverdale, Markham, the South suburbs. Tell us about your childhood, being raised by two Black Panthers. What was that like?
So by the time, let's see. So, the party in Chicago pretty much ended by the mid 70s. So it wasn't an active presence with me coming up under that influence, except for the influence of my parents and their comrades and friends. The party wasn't still in effect during my entire childhood at all. So it was, my memories, I don't have memories of being at the office and things like that. But I was there and was in the daycare and things like that. But their political viewpoints is what is most memorable about my upbringing, and how my family just wasn't the traditional type of Black family. And we moved from Algale to Roseland. So that's really where I spent the majority of my childhood. So by then there was no breakfast programs or anything like that. So it wasn't until I was older where I would be with my father or my mom, and where they were really telling me the story of the Black Panther Party by location, which is now what I'm trying to do, which is say, we used to have an office right here. This used to be a Panther crib right here, and kind of thing. So I'm not sure how it is nowadays, but we definitely did not learn about the Black Panther Party in school, So
it's still that way. Yeah. I didn't learn anything about the Black Panther Party at all,
At all, right?
It's like in history class, they tell you about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks. They might mention a Huey Newton or Bobby Seale, but then that's it. I never read about Fred Hampton in a public school history book, ever.
Right. Yeah. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do now. So I was ignorant too, even though I was from parents from the Black Panther Party. But as far as some kind of formalized teaching, I didn't have that either, except for our own research. And back then we had a lot of Black bookstores, so you could go to Black bookstores and Black libraries and see some of those newspapers and stuff from back in the day.
So even though the Panthers' presence had subsided, by the time he was coming up, you mentioned that your parents will point out locations and places where gathering spots and meeting spots were. What can you recall was like one of the first locations that you remember your parents telling you about?
The South Side office, 4233 South Indiana. And that's probably pretty much because we were from the South Side, and that's where I spent most of my time. I wasn't from the West Side and spent a lot of time on the West Side to know 2350 West Madison until I was older and went over there. And that the West Side, Chicago period, was home to all kinds of Black thought, the Black Panther Party, the Moorish Science Temple, the Nation of Islam, the, Dr. King's following, and other political schools of thought and religious thought too. So, but yeah, 4233 South Indiana, which is in Bronzeville, was the main place that I remember. There was a lot of activities surrounding that location. A lot of party members lived in the area. There were a lot of programs in the area, and we're currently compiling a lot of the programs that took place in Bronzeville by that location. So 4233 Indiana is right off Michigan Avenue. But if you went a little bit more west, back in the day, there would be the Robert Taylor homes.
Yes.
And so there were, it was almost like another office was over there too. There was a church, I think it was like 4837 South State Street, something like that. And the Panthers had a lot of activity going on out of that church too. So it's kind of wherever the programs were, you could find hubs of activity also, even though we would have official offices. Like the West Side office was the official headquarters, and then there was a South Side office, but that 2350 was the West Side headquarters. That was headquarters.
Wow, so that's interesting, because I literally never known that it was, and that's why we're having this conversation first and foremost, because a lot of these spots have been gone overlooked, they've been buried, they've been erased from history. So that's why we're having this conversation. That's why you're doing the work you're doing, which we're going to get into very soon. But I never knew that it was a Panthers meeting spot, near the Robert Taylor homes, at the church near the Robert Taylor homes. And my family is from Bronzeville. My grandmother lived in Bronzeville my entire life. So I'm very familiar with the Robert Taylor homes, the Stateway Gardens, that entire State Street, corridor. But I never knew that until now.
Yeah. So did you, because one thing I got to get you, did you get the newspaper or the book that we did?
The Southside Weekly?
No. There, so we did, and that's okay if you don't have it. So this is my newspaper. Okay, so in this newspaper is all about the Illinois chapter and how it started. It's a free online version of it too. But what my point with this is that in the back are the locations that we have compiled so far. Okay. So this whole page right here, Black Panther Party sites in Illinois, will be very educational. So we'll get you a physical copy, but like I said, it's free online. The same thing with this book. This is also free. You can download a free digital copy, but I'll make sure you get a physical one. And in the back are so it talks about the origins of the Illinois chapter, and then the locations are back here too.
Oh, that's a gold mine.
Oh yeah. So it's a work in progress. So I'm just getting more locations, and I know we haven't got here yet, but I'm getting more locations once we started putting this information out from photographers from back then, from people who were in the Rainbow Coalition. Then there was the Intercommunal Survival Committee. So I'm getting more locations so that we can learn just how extensive the party's work was, and not just in Chicago, which is very extensive, but across the whole state. So we had the breakfast programs, meeting places, police shooting locations, assassination locations, raid locations, medical center, all those kinds of free food giveaway, all that kind of stuff. So I'll make sure I get you these next week. Okay.
Yes, please. And I'll make sure I include the link in the episode description for those listeners so they can download that as well. That's a goal.
Yeah, totally free. Yes.
Okay, yeah, so perfect. So let's just really like fast forward. So, you was raised by the Panthers, like we said. Was it always like a underlying mission of yours to, investigate the history of the Black Panther Party here in Illinois? Like, because you was raised by two Panthers, was that kind of like, just in the forefront of your mind, or did you just kind of end up here by happenstance?
Well, yeah. So it wasn't something in the forefront of my mind, like coming up. I think that when we're young, whether you're in school or not in school or whatever it is, I think the first part of our adult life, and I mean young adult life, like 17, 18 up, you're kind of on your own quest of knowledge kind of thing. So you're reading, you're investigating, you're studying. So I was looking at and researching all kinds of things and living my own life at the same time. So it wasn't until, so anyway, the Black Panther Party has just been an influence, but it was kind of like subconscious, because it wasn't in my brain, but it was always there. And it explains a lot of the moves that I've made and decisions that I've made through my life. So I've always been a researcher, a writer, and that kind of thing. But only until I think it was like 2019, where I've researched other groups and thoughts and things like that, and written about it. But it wasn't until I was over working with Fred Hampton Jr. He's chairman of the Black Panther Party Cubs, his organization. I was over there working with him on the Hampton House to landmark
in Maywood,
Illinois. That's when, so I'm interviewing a lot of the party members, informal conversations, going out into the field. And that's when I was really like, whoa, it didn't occur to me until then how extensive their work was in Chicago, and Rockford and Waukegan and Peoria and all these other places in Illinois. It just didn't occur to me. So that when I was over there with him is when I was doing that research and started compiling these addresses and reading police files, and the Chicago History Museum has files, and the Black Panther Party newspaper. So all these places have addresses of activities and what were going on there. And that's when it dawned on me just how extensive their work was in Chicago, to only be around for such a short time. Yeah. So that's really pretty recent. And just we still haven't even gotten to the surface of telling the story, because if you just take one location, like if me and you just broke down what was happening at that church I was telling you about at Robert Taylor Homes. So there was a breakfast program. Then there was like other people tried to start a free medical center, but the people didn't go, they weren't responsive to that, but they were responsive to the Panthers location. So it's like each location, we could break down a lot of Chicago's history just from the perspective of what the Panthers were doing, in those parts of town.
Wow. I mean, yeah, because like I'm just trying to figure out where to start, because like you said, such a short period of time. Like, how long do you think the presence of the Black Panther Party was in Chicago? Or let's just say Illinois, because it's the Illinois chapter. Let's just say Illinois. Like, how long do you think that presence was? Like,
so 68 is when it started, the Illinois chapter started. And our primary years of focus is until 1974. Okay. Now, somewhere it's hard to pinpoint some of these exact dates at this stage of my research, but I'm sure that we'll be able to come across the exact data. I'm in touch with some people who kept a lot of records, like other reporters and stuff, but we just haven't gotten together yet. So I would say around 75, 76 is probably, we could say, is a safe period on how long the Illinois chapter existed. Now, that's the Illinois chapter, but Oakland, of course, is the party's headquarters. So there was still an activity going on in Oakland. And remember how young the party was too. So they were kind of, the minister would, which is Huey Newton, he would change or make changes, and then they may go into a slightly different direction. Like in the 60s, he said, we want to focus more on our programs. First it was the Black Panther Party for self-defense, where self-defense was the primary focus against police brutality and oppression. And then it was like, let's focus more on the programs and these social things, the breakfast program, medical, blah, 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 all that stuff. They had ambulance services and free food and I think extermination services and all kind of stuff, totally free to the people. So by the mid 70s, that 75, 76 I'm talking about, they had asked resources that chapters had, and I'm specifically talking about Illinois because I can't speak for anybody else, to send those kind of things to Oakland. So like we had a printing press that went to Oakland. We had a free bus for prison, so that went to Oakland. And I would say by then that you could see it all starting to slow down. The party members were growing themselves. Some went back to school to pursue careers. Some started running for office. And a lot of them are still in positions in Chicago now. They're still influencers of decision making in Chicago now.
And the reason why I asked is because, Fred Hampton was like, 21 when he was assassinated. He was very young. I'm about to be 35 this year. And I can't even imagine leading a movement so powerful the way he did. And he did it in such a short amount of time. Essentially, that was like 2 years worth of work that he did, as the deputy chairman and, the chairman of the Illinois chapter. And within that time frame, so even just, if we're just talking about his tenure, 2 years, right? But if we look at the tenure of the entire Illinois chapter, which is, we say, roughly 8 years, within those short periods of time, you had all of these locations accumulated in the city, and like you said, neighboring counties, Rockford, Waukegan, Peoria, Central Illinois, that were making an impact in the communities. That's amazing when you really just look at the magnitude of that. And you say you still haven't even scratched the surface of your research yet.
Yeah, so the first part is compiling these addresses. Some of them we've gone into the field to investigate, and of course, because of gentrification and other reasons, a lot of them don't even exist anymore. So now I just had an email from somebody else who he had done research on Chairman Fred himself, I don't know how many years ago. So he's sending me his notes, and in his notes, are new addresses that I didn't know about. So we have the places where, the last place he gave his speech, the apartment where he was assassinated, they tore that building down, and now there's another structure in the same place. They tore down the West Side office and the South Side office and the medical center. So it's almost an urgent situation where we've already lost our major locations, but we have to make sure that the Panthers are not wiped out of the city's history and the state's history from the landscape also. So yes, the structures may not be there, but we are trying to get markers at those locations. So we haven't scratched the research because there's some urgent things that need to happen immediately and as the research continues. And our organization this was our first year, 2022, first year of operation, and we got a really good response from the public. We have offers of volunteers. So now it's a matter of organizing these forces so that we can get more research done. Now, before it was just like me and I have two Loyola graduate students. They've graduated now and they're now actual historians, Adam Eunice and Mikey Spain, and they were helping me with all this research and Landmarks, Illinois, the Chicago History Museum, and all kind of resources that we have. But now, hopefully we'll be able to organize a little bit more and keep it going. But this is a long project. It's not a short project at all. But guess what? We owe it to even Chicago public school students. We just want to have these resources of education available, for public school students, college students, and just learners of history, period.
Yeah. And it's necessary because, Chicago, as we know, is a very historical city. A lot of history has happened here. You walk down 53rd Street to Hyde Park, you're going to see the monument where Barack Obama and Michelle Obama had their first date, right? You're going to see the monument, testimony to that. You're going to see statues of Stephen Douglas in, Bronzeville, because the community is named after him. The whole thing about Columbus statue, a couple summers ago, there's all these markers around the city, but yet, you're trying to tell me that we can't have markers that tells me this is where the headquarters of the Black Panther Illinois party was. Like, I don't even know where that is. Like you said, the building is gone, but like, what's there now? I would
Walgreens.
It's a Walgreens. So
now, see, there is this. Now, I'm new to this. We just talked about the year 2019 when I started all this research. Now, what I learned was there is something in preservation called the 50-year rule. So there is a 50-year rule where let's take the Black Panther Party, and you cannot seek landmark status for a person or organization or even a building unless the significant period was 50 years ago or more. Now, this rule exists because I guess from what I read, it was put in place so to prevent like political partisan type of things, a one-sided view. So after 50 years, so now it's like the Panthers are 50 years later, it's politically correct and acceptable to talk about them. But before this time, they were victims of a 50-year smear campaign. First it was just like they're cop killers, they're this, they're that. And we were just there having to take that, because no matter what your objection was, it was only so much mass media was going to put out on the party. So now this 50-year rule has passed, and yeah, we're trying to set the record straight. Things have changed during that time, even the landscape of media, local media, people like you, where the educational part of the Panther Party is now getting out. So that's so you not knowing where that was, we were all ignorant of a lot of things. And so that's what it's fun too, though. It is fun because it's enlightening. I learn something new every single day. I just talked to one of the party members in California, and we were talking about the event that we had in October. And I didn't even know. I said, yeah, I think October would be a great month for our annual event, because that's the month the party was founded in Oakland in 1966, and it's before winter, and we don't want people coming out in the snow and all that stuff. And so he told me that a while ago the Panther Party had designated October as Black Panther Party History Month. So all of the chapters and everybody, and this is in recent years, not in the 60s, but in recent years, where all the chapters should be educating their communities on the history and legacy of the Black Panther Party. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. But that's something I just learned. So my point is that we're all ignorant as we embark on this, because the path wasn't laid out there before. Yeah. And the good news is that they were so young. We have a lot of them still with us, where we're not reliant on scholars and people who weren't there and they just did their own research. Now we're reading their interpretations of what happened. We can hear from the party members themselves.
Yes,
what
and
they
that's
call
huge
first-hand account.
Because the work you and your organization is doing is going to be huge for the next generation, because 50 years from now, those Panthers, they won't be here. You know, eventually you won't be here. Eventually I won't be here, but the history will be written already. And that's why it's so, the gravity of this work is so huge and so strong, because we need to know these things, right? Just how we need to know our family history, we need to know the history of what goes on in our city and like what went on in our city and where it happened. You know, so you say the site of the headquarters is a Walgreens now, okay? What's some other sites like? Are they just mostly like vacant lots now, or like condos? You know, like what's some other things that you discovered like as you went to these locations?
First, I didn't even say this at the top, but thank you for having me, because you being so enthusiastic and wanting to know these things is just, you know, it's very gratifying to let us know that it's landing. Like
Of course.
it's landing. It's not
Yeah.
just, this is what we need to do and then nobody cares. So
Oh, yeah, it's
it means
important.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, the West Side office is a Walgreens. Now, that is in, is that, would that be categorized as Lawndale? I was trying to make a point with gentrification. So gentrification is something that has been ongoing before now, okay? Like even Lincoln Park was not the Lincoln Park that you see today,
I
okay?
learned that,
There were Puerto Ricans there, the Young Lords, you know, and other groups that were there that got moved out, and now it is a yuppie paradise, okay? So it's not this current state of gentrification that has torn these properties down. It was something that has already happened. I think I'll add that to the research on what years these places were torn down. So I believe that 2350 on the West Side has been torn down for a long time, but that Walgreens is kind of new, okay? Now the South Side office, there was a South Side office on 35th and King Drive. There's a new building there. Okay.
35th and King, really?
Yeah, right on the corner where that Chase.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's a docks over there now. Yeah. Okay.
That corner was the Black Panther Party office. Later, I believe, came the office at 4233 South Indiana. That is a house next door, some storefronts on the corner, but it's a tree growing up where the party's location actually was. The medical center on 16th Street on the West Side, empty lot. Okay. Now, those would be what I would consider our main locations. So they're all gone. Every last main location is gone. Now we're down to program locations. So like the Better Boys Foundation at on Pulaski on the West Side, that's still there. Okay. That was the first breakfast program location for the Black Panther Party in Chicago. It's a new structure, but it's the same organization and the same location. So a lot of the party's breakfast programs were out of churches. So a lot of those churches are still there too. The main meeting place of the party in Chicago, where they would have public meetings and things like that, was the People's Church. That is the Epiphany Center for the Arts, Epiphany Art Center on, I don't know, I know these addresses by heart. I don't know why.
Addresses. It's a lot of addresses to keep up with. It's a lot of
201 South Ashland. I was like, I know these, you know, by heart. So that structure is still there, still beautiful, and it's already a landmark. Now it's not a church anymore. They used to call it, it wasn't even the real name wasn't the People's Church in the 60s, but they called it the People's Church. And the current owners are taking very good care of the building. So that's one location that's already a landmark, where what we're going to do is add the Panther Party's narrative to that landmark. Okay. So that'll be our first place, besides the childhood home of Chairman Fred, which has already been secured locally, but not nationally. So yeah, we want to have some physical landmarks like the People's Church, the Better Boys Foundation, and we have identified a few more that we're still discussing, and then get some markers at that Walgreens, like somewhere you know, outside of that, in the South Side offices. So currently, just to finish this point, we started working with the state of Illinois first. Okay, so that's where national status, you get the national landmark status. That's the first place. Now, we do need to work with the city of Chicago locally for that Walgreens place to get permission to put something on the sidewalk or the street. So we presented to the city last year and we haven't heard anything back yet. So we're getting more allies and forces, and we're going to start. This is going to become an issue soon that I'll let you know if we need some additional support when dealing with the city of Chicago, because, you know, that could be kind of a very controversial relationship, but, you know, it's well within our rights to do what we're setting out to do.
And you know, I'm glad that you said what you just said, because that was going to be my next question, the difference between the national status and all that. So essentially, you get the national status from the state. The state secures that for you, which says this location is a national historical landmark. However, if you want to put the monuments and the markers there, the city itself has to give you permission to do that. So I will assume the first point of contact will have to be the alderman of that particular ward. Is that how that process works?
So we're still working through the process, but what we did was Chicago has a commission for a landmarking commission, like a group of people that are appointed by the mayor, and they hear these, CVS High School, whoever, you name anywhere, they have to be presented before the landmarking commission. So there is an alderman in some of these locations, and then some of the aldermen, get flipped when it's election time, kind of thing. So we weren't at that stage yet, because like I said, this was our first year of operation. So a lot of this research in the background has been going on, but now this year, 2023, is when we'll really start making a lot of overtures for these things. Now, I just want to say one thing, because I think landmarking and historic preservation is important to Black people, even whether it's the Black Panther Party or not, because we've always, since we arrived in Chicago during the Great Migration, we've been moved around, at the whim of whoever, like we'll take this now, like y'all get out of here. And I think that we should take stock of the personalities of our community and what is important to us, because nobody can tell us what's important and what should or should not be landmarked, even if it was a barbershop. Like, one of my main arguments is, and I don't really have to argue because I have nothing but supporters. We have nothing but supporters who are helping right now, but Black people's locations sometimes are not beautiful architecture. They could be some storefront that was a church on Sunday, and then it was a breakfast program Monday through Friday, and then maybe some other group held a day camp there during the summer. Like, it could be anything at these storefronts. So they may not always be beautiful, but they may mean something to our history. And I think a lot of us should really look at our communities, what's important, because that gives our young people a sense of identity when they're coming and going, walking to school. Like, imagine what our mentality would be if you walk by the Black Panther Party headquarters every day and you knew that, even though they weren't in operation anymore. You'd be like, oh, that was I know the Black Panther, their headquarters right down, you have a sense of identity,
And that's real, man. That's real. Like, again, like when you made the comment about the church at the Robert Taylor homes, I went past them so many times, I can't even count, and like, I still don't live too far from that area. It's nothing but about a 10-15 minute drive to get there. And it's like, wow, like this entire time, because like, okay, for example, we know Candyman was filmed at Cabrini Green.
Yeah.
Cabrini Green is famous because of Candyman, right? So, whenever you drive past Cabrini Green, to this day, the row houses is the only thing that's left there. But like, first thing that will come to mind would be Candyman. So when you bring this knowledge to people's minds about, okay, this is where the first medical center was that the Black Panther Party installed in the city. This is where, the headquarters was. It would hit differently in your mind. Like, wow, this is it. This is history right here. Because again, we can't just ignore history because you know, what critics want to say, you know, and, you know, the false narratives. History is history. Again, we can have a monument because the 44th president went on his first date on 53rd Street. Surely we can have a monument, you know, about what the Panthers was doing in 68, 69, 70. I don't see what the problem is. I'm not a politician, you know, but I don't see how this isn't just, okay, cool. You know, like y'all want to make movies about it. You know, they put out Judas and the Black Messiah a couple of years ago. And, you know, a lot of people like the film, but a lot of places, a lot of scenes in that movie, I didn't know where it was. I just knew it was in Chicago. You know, I just knew
a lot of it wasn't filmed in Chicago, so you wouldn't have been able to point it out.
Right. But, you know, just like as far as like the historical, you know, events, like I just know it was in Chicago on the West Side somewhere. I can't tell you where they was at, you know, what they was doing, you know. Yeah. So these markers are necessary. And like when you present this, is it like a bundle package? Like, so you got all these addresses, right?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, because I'm curious to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question because that's important to make the distinction, okay? So because we have so many properties associated with the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, what we're seeking is what is called, and this is state level, okay? So right now the focus is state level. So what we're seeking is called a thematic listing. Like a theme. Okay. So of course, every location, like right now we have over 80 locations. So all of those locations are not going to be landmarks. And another thing I wanted to point out before I continue is that getting landmark status will not protect the building from demolition and a lot of other things, that state designation. However, the city designation will. So that's why on an actual landmark, you want the local status and you also want the national status, but the national will not protect you. There are some other benefits, but that's not one of them. Okay. Yeah. So what we're seeking is called a thematic listing for sites of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. Yeah. So our thematic listing is the same as if we were, you know, another thematic listing could be firehouses built in the 1800s. Okay, so you may have a firehouse built in the 1800s scattered throughout the state of Illinois, but that would be part of this thematic historical listing. Okay, so that's what we're seeking: Black Panther Party sites in Illinois. Now, through these addresses that are in here and in the newspaper, we will determine which ones we'll go after. So this year, like I said, we said the People's Church, the Better Boys Foundation, and there's a few others, and that's to establish the national thematic listing on the National Registry. So we are scheduled to present to the state of Illinois in June this year down in Springfield to apply for, and you know, so much research and paperwork that is just not done yet, to apply for and for them to vote on a registry for the thematic listing for the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. Now, with that will come listings and all kinds of tourism things and stuff on the state's website, but that does not leave us from the burden of seeking those recognitions locally to get those monuments or something there. Now, what I want to say about the monuments and the markers is things got dicey. I don't know where this argument is now, but when they started removing those statues during the protests and all that kind of stuff, in my opinion, that set a bad precedent. So you remember the Columbus statue that was in Grant Park, and the Italians really protested that. And, you know, I was not in agreement to removing these statues because you can't erase history. Now, some group found it important enough to put a monument of Columbus in Grant Park. Now, the question is, why? Who? You could do the research, but we also want to have our own monuments. So we start removing other communities' monuments. Where's that going to our argument? Because one of the biggest enemies or antagonists of the Black Panther Party is the Chicago Police Department. That's a historic problem there. So if we say, oh, they can't have this statue, then that, where does that leave our argument? So I don't think we should have removed that Columbus statue. But if another group was interested, like Native Americans or our community or whoever, you erect your own monument and tell your own history, and then you let the people decide. These are the contradictions that occur in this country. Like, this is a country that had genocide of the Native Americans, slavery of Black people there, and the Panther Party is not a hit. That's why it's taking so long, because this history is not a feel-good history. A lot of bloodshed happened, and it was a lot of turmoil. So it's not an easy story to tell. And that's why we shouldn't tear down other people's monuments with those difficult stories. We need to just erect our own and then let the people learn from each one.
I understand what you're saying, because even though the Columbus statue was gone, we know what Columbus did and who he was. That's never going to be erased. I get what you're saying. Just like with the Confederate statues, even though there's no Confederate statues in Illinois, but down south, I get it. Like, you want to remove them, all right, but they still did what they did, and they still existed. So I definitely understand the point that you were making there, because I can see the pushback now. I can just see it brewing. Like the organization makes this move to have a monument built of whatever location that the Panther Party was active at, and you're gonna have people saying something. And even though in the grand scheme of things, who cares? But that's still a real obstacle, because politics is a real thing. And in Chicago, we know politics is very, very hard to navigate. Probably the hardest to navigate in the entire country. Yeah.
And the Panthers were a political organization, and they went head to head with the politicians of our city. And all of us are taxpayers. So the argument can be, they could try to make it emotional or whatever they want to do, but we have the facts, and the Panther Party means something to us and our community and a lot of other communities. So we're there for it. Like, whatever y'all want to do, we there for it. Yeah. But that's why I didn't agree with that whole tearing down the statue. What you do is just raise the contradiction. So if you had in the South, if you have a Confederate soldier, they could have put one of the Union soldiers or a freedman who was, or something. Yeah. To tell the complete story, because we are all telling history from our vantage point. So that's why school, we would reject the history they're giving us from their vantage point. But now here we had to start a whole historical organization to tell the Black Panther Party's history, from our vantage point.
Yeah, man. So, it's all this work that the organization is doing, and I'm thinking about it like what you said on the city level, the community level. It's sites in Peoria, Rockford, Waukegan, like you said. So that's work too, right? Like, you guys have to go down there and up there and over there to present to those city councils to do the same thing.
So every place won't be. Once we have that national listing for the thematic listing,
yes,
then we don't really have to go to each individual municipality, okay, unless we were going to ask for landmarks in those places. So we do have addresses in Rockford, Peoria, and these other places. Now, so that wouldn't be our immediate focus to seek landmarks there. I think the most urgent landmarks are our major sites in Chicago. Now, if we can make it through that, I think we'll be okay. The Hampton House made it through Maywood, and that Maywood Village Council, they were very supportive the whole time. Like, there hasn't been any opposition, but there hasn't been anyone to go do this in the city of Chicago yet. So that's what we're preparing to do. That's going to tell us a lot, but our first thing is going to be the state level. And once we get that level, that covers Peoria, DeKalb, all those kind of places that had Black Panther Party locations, but you do have to add each property to the thematic listing.
You're right.
If you, okay.
Of course, yeah.
It doesn't mean they're automatically part of it just because they had a breakfast program.
Right. Got it. So you guys, you got the landmark status for Chairman's home, for his home in Maywood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, just a quick note, like we didn't get that status for his home. I just wanted to say that before you continue with that question. You could ask the question, but we were working on it, and then I went and did this, and then there was a lot going on with that movie and stuff. So just it just got done.
Okay, got it. Okay. What about the site where Chairman Fred Hampton was assassinated? Is that building still there? It is.
So well, no, but that's a good question. So the address 2337 West Monroe, where he was assassinated, that original structure is not there, but there is another building that is there, and they kept the same address. We do have that on our list. We are seeking that address as part of our thematic listing because that is a huge, important part of the story of the Illinois chapter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just curious because all of the talk about his childhood home. I was curious to know about on that fateful night, December 4th, 1969, what was going on there too. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Now his Chairman Fred's mother, Mrs. Hampton, from what I understand, she told one of the lawyers at the time, and I mean Chairman Fred's Senior's mother, Mrs. Iberia Hampton, she didn't want that street named after him. So we're not going to make a big out of that. Having that in mind, we do want that part as part of our thematic listing, but we don't want to make it a celebratory type of thing.
Correct.
It's a dark day in what happened over there. I just want to make that note.
Yeah, because I could only imagine, but again, people still need to know at least where it is, So I definitely support, her thoughts for do not name this after my son. This is not what I want my son named after. It's a whole bunch of things you can name after him, but no, not this. But to know these things, and again, it just comes back to the crux of the whole matter, which is it's necessary. We have to know, it's necessary, because it's like, I'm only 34, all right, but I remember it's a lot of things I remember from my childhood. Again, Bronzeville, Southside, that doesn't exist anymore. It's a lot of things that changed within my lifetime. So I can only imagine how much has changed within 50 years. I can only imagine how many things have been torn down, built up, torn down again. So it's like, again, eventually all of this is gonna fade away, and when it does fade away, and there's no one here to tell the story, how does history continue on? When those griots are gone, how does history continue on? And the documentation is so important. One thing I wanted to ask is this book. Has it been any talk or any thought about possibly getting it into Chicago public libraries, perhaps, or?
Oh, this book that we just did?
Yeah.
Okay. But to your point, that is so true about that through the years, how we don't know how much history has been changed or lost through the years. Now, once we get this thematic listing, and let's say we successfully get 6 properties added to it. And I mean, within the next 3 or 4 years, because we're not the only people seeking landmark status. There's a whole bunch of people in the state. So it's not like they're just at our beck and call. It's a whole bunch of people. So this is a project, even 20 years from now, that people hopefully who come behind us will still be able to identify properties, build curriculums, learning curriculums around all this documentation that has to happen and other things. So this book that we did was really for the Illinois chapter. I wanted them to really fact check it, right, before we did some huge push. So right now it's free and available to the public. And so far I have one missing location in here, and I have some more locations. So what I'm thinking about is just, make it a little more fancy schmancy, putting some more
Yeah.
addresses here. But yeah, I could totally give it to the library. That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, and I'm
That's
just
very
curious because libraries are a source of research and knowledge as
yeah.
well. So I was just curious, even though that it is free, but everyone doesn't. Unfortunately, still in 2023, everyone doesn't have access to strong internet and computers and things like that. So yeah, it was
No,
just
I think that's an excellent idea. I think we need to make that happen. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great idea.
yeah.
Thank you.
So as you continue to build up these lists of addresses, from, like you said, photographers, other historians, even Panthers themselves, telling you firsthand knowledge. Um, you know, is it ever like a time where you just like stumble across another location, like, wow, another one, like how has that been? Like, do they just pop up like that, the locations?
Not really. So first it was an all out push, like, hey, I need to interview you. They're like, well, I don't, so we were interviewing them, getting so some of those listings you'll still see that we don't have the exact address. So they'll say, well, we had a community office on, I'll just throw this out here, 64th and Sangamon, but I don't remember the exact address. So now that takes some work now, because now I might have to take one of them over there and they'll be like, it was right here. And then so, and that then you look up where, if it's an empty lot and things like that. So, so they all knew, all of the Illinois chapter members that we spoke to and everybody that's involved with and know about the organization they know we're on a quest for these addresses. So now they're coming more like, hey, did you know about this address? And the young lords did this with the party over here. And we have a lot of stuff that happened in Cabrini Green. See, that's why this is important too, because so for your generation, part of mine with the Candyman thing, but before us, Cabrini Green was known for other reasons, and they had a lot of community activists over there. They were giving the Daley administration some work back then. It was a more prolific type of time. Yeah. So each generation has its own memories of these locations. So that's another reason why we want to have that full picture there. Yeah. So the addresses do come up in conversations, but now it's more, if they'll call me, they'll say, but did you know about this address? And so now people know we're looking for these addresses, and that's how they send them in. Yeah.
How, if you can give an estimate, how large do you think the party membership was in Chicago at its peak?
I still don't know. I still don't know. And even if you read because none of them, I haven't really pursued it I just asked a few times and then none of them will give me an answer. So then I don't worry about it anymore. And then even when you read the FBI files or the Chicago police files, you don't even see them guesstimating the membership number. So I don't know. And there was so many different peak time. So you had the beginning 68 when they started until December 1969 when they assassinated Chairman Fred and Mark Clark. So right after that, you could say a lot of the party members left. A lot of people left for whatever reason, for many reasons, I should say, at that time. Then you would have a whole new wave come in. So that new wave in 1970 could have lasted until 72, 73. Then you may have another wave. Now, a lot of that could also be age related. So if they were 15, 16, 17, that would mark a new chapter just in your own biological life where things change and then you're off doing something else too. So yeah, I don't have that answer.
And the reason why I ask is because, again, like, just so many locations in like such a short amount of time, and you can only imagine, like, it ain't the same people going to all of these locations, which I'm sure did happen, but in most cases it's like, whoever lived in this neighborhood, they met here, and then when it was time for them to go, then when it was time for them to go out west to the main headquarters, that's when they went. But 80 locations and you still finding more, and it's like, Chicago's a big city, of course, Chicago's a very big city, but it's just mind blowing to me because I feel like it's still so many out there that you guys haven't uncovered yet.
Yeah, so part of it too was the community dynamic that the party had. So they charged themselves with going, they had they all, it was politically organized, so everybody had positions or cadres and
Yeah.
assignments, and everybody had to work multiple programs. So Huey Newton wanted them to start these programs, but the programs were never designed for the Black Panthers to continue them themselves. It was to show the people how to do it, how to serve their own needs in their own community, and then for the people to take it over. So even within a breakfast program, let's say, I don't know, you had 6 party members there could be community workers there. There could be volunteers there. And so once it was under control, that was the idea. So I can't tell you how many that actually happened with, where the party went in, started something, then they left and started it somewhere else because the people took it over. But that was the idea. So a lot of those places did have a lot of community involvement, which is why I'm saying that if we went through the list and broke down what was going on in the community, it would be super enlightening too, because some of those community people may not have joined the party, but agreed with they were in agreement on certain other things, like serving the needs of the community, whatever that thing was. If they were volunteers at a program, they agreed with the Black Panther Party on some level, and could have just even been as simple as afraid of the guns. Like, okay, I'm with y'all, but I'm scared of those guns.
And I got a interesting point about that. So, like, about the original template about how the Panthers were supposed to show the community this is the template for the free breakfast program or the free medical center, etc. When I was younger, like I was in high school, I had a conversation with a guy, a man. He was older than me. He had made a point that when he was younger, he used to like go down there and volunteer as well, like him and his older brother. But they was doing it secretly, meaning their parents didn't know about it. And when their parents found out about it, they didn't let them do it anymore. And I asked him why. He was like, because I don't want you to come home dead. So, like, as you were saying that last bit, one thing that popped in my head was like, I wonder how many of the community members actually were afraid to be around the Panthers, because although what the Panthers were doing was righteous, it was necessary, it was radical to the status quo of America with 3 Ks, it was still fearful for a lot of people because, they didn't want to go to jail, they didn't want to get killed. Do you think that had a huge impact on the community as well, from your vantage point?
Yeah, you said, did I think it had a huge impact on, what was that? It froze a little bit.
Did you think that had a huge impact on the community as well, from your vantage point, like from your research and all of that?
Oh yeah, I would think so. I would think so, because remember that it was before, Dr. King. So Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, when the Panther Party started, right? Not at the same time, but the party started before that. So it was a huge departure from the strategy of nonviolence, right? So you would imagine a lot of people were adhering to the Dr. King strategy of nonviolence. And then here comes the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So, and there were other self-defense organizations too, the Deacons for Defense and the Armed Black Guard, which all of them had chapters in Chicago too. That's what I mean. We had a lot of different schools of thought in Chicago. All these organizations coexisted. So I would think that the Panther Party, with their self-defense stance and being openly armed and saying you had a right to defend yourself from racist and oppressive forces and police, I think a lot of people I think that would have been an issue, especially for their parents. Their parents definitely would have taken an issue with it. And the Black Panther Party was a political organization. I think that created a lot of division also, because you had all these new Black elected officials, you had people who were in bed with Mayor Daley at that time, and the Panther Party was going right up against that Daley administration. So that was another thing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would think the gun thing would be a major.
Yeah. Yeah, huge. And, I can't speak to, I don't have any children at all, but I can't speak to how it is to raise a child in that tumultuous time. The 60s, a lot of things happened in America, but especially Black America in the 60s. Like you mentioned, Dr. King, Malcolm X, the nation, Vietnam was still going on. That was a huge political thing. The Panthers. I can't imagine raising a Black boy or a Black girl during that time. So I can't speak on their decisions if it was right or wrong. But I do want to say it's heartbreaking because in every single Black political movement, whether it was civil rights, the Black Power movement, the nation, the Black Panthers, COINTELPRO, and double agents was always that insidious venom that brought it down, and that's really was so heartbreaking. It makes you wonder what could have been if everybody really just saw things from the same vantage point, which is this is for our betterment. Dr. King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, they may have had different verbiage, or they walked down different avenues, but nonetheless, the destination was the same. But we still had so many people that were manipulated or chose the oppressor side, and went against what the Black Panther Party was doing, and it's just real unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that one of the lessons we can learn from the infiltration of the Black Panther Party and other organizations, I think we really need to accept that we were a conquered people, like in slavery. Are you there, hon?
Yeah.
There you are. Okay. When you're still, I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So we were a conquered people. Okay.
Yes.
The same way, and I don't mean mentally, that's a different argument. I just mean subjugated. I mean, we were captured. The same way in the 60s, there were other struggles against colonialism. Cuba, China, I think Angola, there were a lot of other places that were involved in these struggles against colonialism. Now, the Panther Party, and I believe other organizations, were very much aware of infiltration. I believe they were very much aware of it. I just don't think they understood how insidious and nasty and petty it could be. Meaning, like, let me write a letter to his wife that she's sleeping with so-and-so. You know what I'm saying? You would think it would be more militarily, okay, in a physical clash rather than psychological. Okay. Yes. So I think I'm saying we, even though I wasn't there, but we as a people underestimate the tactics of COINTEL. So,
and they did that with the Stones. They did that with the Black Panthers and the Stones, right? Like they had them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now they caught on to that one. But after a minute, but that could have went bad because you have an initial emotional reaction that could get ugly. So moving forward, so when we have these new groups that are coming up, like, and they have been made in it's almost like a laboratory, but they come out of these institutions and then they become our new civil rights group. Okay. But they were born inside of a college, but not by the students. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think that it is not us, period. When we think, I think it's naive when we think that all of us will always or should go in the same direction. I think that they have bred the mistrust, but I also think the mistrust is needed because we are in another land. Like, no matter what the integration is and all that kind of stuff, we were conquered by this country and they were the oppressor, and oppressors want to keep their power. So if there are new movements coming up, the oppressor they almost have to send people to see what is going on. Are we going to have an internal problem while we're having this extra? Like, if you're in power, you constantly have to protect your power. So I think that if we just are aware of that, we would know how to move a little better in planning our future moves for the betterment of the community. But I don't think we'll ever be without that kind of influence, or other, even globally. So even other governments get interfered with, or a leader gets poisoned, and there's internal conflicts, and there's a coup and that kind of thing. If we think on a military level, you know, and our position, it's not equal. So people think that they're actually equal, and we have my rights, and we don't. No.
Yeah.
No. Let's understand why we're here, how we got here, and the need of a Black Panther Party, the need of a Dr. King, the need of Malcolm, or whoever else you want to. They didn't just spring up because there was not a need there. So I just think we need to mature in our viewpoint and vantage point on what to expect from organizations, you know, and then I think we'll be okay. That's not to say like-minded people shouldn't coalesce, but to expect an entire big group to be on one accord, I think it's
not human nature. It's not human nature. Yeah, it's not human nature. And I think nowadays we need more leadership. You know, I think the days of those titanic individuals of, you know, Chairman Fred Hampton, Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, those days are over with. I think nowadays we need more leadership, especially when communication and social media is so huge now. I think we just need more people that's willing to humble themselves, but at the same time do what needs to be done, as opposed to allowing ego to disrupt the vision and the clarity, which, you know, again, brings me back to you and your organization and the work that you all are doing, which is necessary. So what is the future like for the organization? And how can people who are listening or watching support the organization efforts going forward?
Yeah, so to your point, I think that the days of leadership today is almost just like what we're seeing on social media. I think when we collectively have a need, right? Let's say if it was housing or legal or whatever it is, it's almost like a wave happens, and then leadership emerges. Like they're like, oh, this guy is a lawyer in charge. Let me listen to see what he's got to say. So this guy is talking from his, you know, expertise. Then another need, but us having an all-encompassing leader, I don't think is wise at all. Now, when we do different, so I'm over here in my own lane with the Historical Preservation Society. Like, it's very hyper focused on the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, but that's not to say I don't have needs where I'm checking in with other people who are on top of that issue. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I think, that if we just, leadership emerges as it needs to, based on people's expertise, but not a personality leader, not based on somebody's personality. So our organization this year, we had our first operational year in 2022, which went really good. We had a really great response. Our main mission is educational about the Illinois chapter. So the newspaper, the book, the website, we have a lot of other educational materials. We had 2 events which featured people from the Illinois chapter. So we're right on our mission. And this year we just want to continue to do the same, except for this year is actually when we're going for that landmarking piece in the state of Illinois. So that's a big thing. I'll keep you posted on that. Now, the people, if they could join our email list, it'd be very simple to keep in touch, and that's how we make announcements. We have a new interview with this chapter member. We have this free book for you. We have, you know, I just gave away a free calendar. So they just have to go online to download a free calendar. They could take it to like their favorite printer, like Kinko's or FedEx or somewhere, and it probably cost like $2 to print, but they could just, it's free, you know, that's all they have to do. So we want to keep doing things like that. So that's all. Oh, the website is ilbpp.org, like Illinois Black Panther Party. So ilbpp.org, and just join the email list. The free ebook is there, the newspaper's there, the calendar is there,
Perfect.
and we'll keep you posted on our next events.
Perfect. I'll make sure I put the email address, the website in the episode description.
Cool.
But yeah, this is amazing. You know, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and SoCHiology about everything that the organization is doing to preserve the history of the Black Panther Party in Chicago and in Illinois, because it's necessary and we definitely need it.
So before we go, thank you for having me too. And I love your podcast, but tell me why you named it that. I just wanted to understand.
Oh,
It's
SoCHiology.
Oh yeah.
SoCHiology. Yeah, so the original name was Chicagoology, but that was taken. It was already taken, and I'm not sure if he had it trademarked or whatever, but it was taken already, because I conceived the idea about 10 years ago, but I didn't start it until 2020. So it took me 10 years to actually get the confidence and start it. Like I actually got notes in my emails from 10 years ago with, basically what we're doing right now. And so the original name was Chicagoology, and Chicagoology was taken. So I was bouncing ideas around with one of my friends, and her name is Ebony Frazier, because I want her name to be known so she can get the credit, But she basically was like, "What about SoCHiology?" I'm like, that'll work, because again, my old notes, I had two concepts. Chicagoology was one of them, but then SoCHiology was another one. It was an entire different concept though, like a whole nother platform. So I'm like, that's literally like both of them combined. So that's how it came about.
Great name.
Thank you.
That's a great title. I really like it a lot.
That's how it came about.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So congrats, Ebony. That was a good move. Good guidance. But thanks for having us on to talk about all these things. And I'll keep you posted and, invite you to the next events and send you all this stuff too. But your interest in it really, really means a lot.
That was Leila Wills, co-founder and executive director of the Historical Preservation Society of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. Now, don't forget to go to www.ilbpp.org to follow the organization and know about all of the updates as they fight to get these landmark statuses preserved and finalized, as well as to download your free calendar and the book with all of the locations they've accumulated thus far.
If you enjoyed this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on right now, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc., leave a 5-star review and a comment. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to our sister podcast, Mogul Motivation, from True Stories Media.